keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about defensive linemen that could potentially be day 2 picks for the San Francisco 49ers. And you might ask, why day 2? Well, I think the 49ers have to look in rounds 2 and 3, potentially round 1, to somewhat fill some of the holes. You look at the 49ers' current roster through the first couple days of free agency, and you see that there's definitely some things that need to be fixed. 49ers defensive line is missing a lot of talent. Today was the first day officially of the league new year. And Javon Hargrave goes to Minnesota and signs a 2-year deal worth $30 million. He was a 49ers starting defensive tackle last year. Malik Collins, recently released. He goes to the Cleveland Browns and he gets $10 million per year over a 2-year contract. 49ers have been losing defensive linemen, and they've been losing them at a rapid speed. So the 49ers, you would think, would have to go out and get someone on the open market. But so far, we're seeing names fly off the scrap heap, fly off free agency, and none of them are landing in San Francisco. They're landing everywhere else. Are the 49ers just going cheap? Or maybe the 49ers are waiting to potentially hit a free agent here or there that, is cost effective, but they're eyeing the draft. And why would they be eyeing the draft? Well, first off, this is one of the best defensive tackle drafts that we've seen in a long time. And if you want to get a lot of production from players that you're going to have control for a very cheap contract on the interior defensive line, this is the way to go about it. When the 49ers first started having problems and having to move on from certain defensive linemen is when DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead got off their rookie contracts. Once that happened, it happened a little bit faster than the Shanahan and Lynch regime wanted it to happen, but they didn't draft those particular players. Once they did, and they got off those rookie deals, they had to make a decision. So now you could reset what you do on the interior defensive line with a draft that is very talented, whether you're in round 1, round 2, round 3. And of course, we're going to be talking mostly about rounds 2 and 3 today. But you could get guys that could potentially step in and start. There's some that are saying there's 30 starting defensive tackles in this year's draft. As of right now, as I've been going through the grading, I'm getting close to 20, at least right now, but I still have a lot of players to go through. So this is a very talented group and a place the 49ers could be very cost effective while getting playmakers that can make an impact on this team for at least the next 4 seasons, which is extremely important with how the 49ers have to find sustainability. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they have sustainability because they've drafted well in the interior defensive line and the edge rush department. And then when those guys get priced out, they let them leave. Milton Williams just got $26 million out on the open market to the New England Patriots. And what are they content with doing? Probably hitting this draft and replacing Milton Williams with a younger version of Milton Williams, because there are guys in this draft that are pretty darn good. So we're going to take a really deep dive into round 2 and 3, or day 2 of the draft. And there's a lot of talented players here. And I think most people right now would prefer the 49ers go defensive tackle in round 1. We're going to talk just a little bit about who those guys are that we think are going to go in round 1 and who might fall to round 2 and potentially be a dynamite pick at pick 43 for the 49ers. So buckle in. We're talking defensive line, and I think right now, looking at the 49ers roster, defensive line is the biggest need. Who are your projected starters right now? Evan Givens, Jordan Elliott. You've got the backups potentially in young Kalia Davis, who hasn't really showed anything besides flashes in preseason. And then Evan Anderson, who right now is a 2-down defensive tackle in the NFL, doesn't really provide any pass rush. So it's going to be interesting, but they have to come up with 2 starters. Givens and Jordan Elliott are not starters in the NFL. They should be rotational pieces. So that's where the 49ers need to go. Is it going to be free agency? Maybe they get one, but the way they're being financially prudent, I think it's more likely they're probably going to the draft. So that's why this one's going to be a lot of fun. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you are going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your game day betting. It's whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest, Bet Online continues to be the number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, Bet Online is you cover with odds, stats, and more for every game and every play and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. So when looking at it, there's a few players that could potentially drop. I think the player that most are not expecting to drop, right, is the guy at the very top, Mason Graham. Besides that, we've seen these guys kind of fluctuate from spot to spot. We've seen Kenneth Grant be as high as 11 to the 49ers. They don't think that's very likely that the 49ers go with a potential 2-down player at 11. And I know there's a lot of people that feel he could be a 3-down player in the NFL. And if that is the case, well, this is a big man that moves really well and could be a dynamite run stopper and potentially, a player that could get after the quarterback. I think Kenneth Grant is more a late 1 guy than potentially a, top 20 pick. But Kenneth Grant could slide into the second round. Wanted to mention him, not going to feature him. I've talked a little bit more about him in other shows, so he's not going to be one I feature. Walter Nolan, we've talked about him as high as 11. And I think we've seen him slowly falling down boards to where you're starting to get some of the national pundits mocking him at the end of the first round. In fact, I talked about Milton Williams moving on. A lot of people have the Eagles taking Walter Nolan at pick 32 to replace Milton Williams along their defensive front. Boy, would that be an embarrassment of riches now, wouldn't it? So he could potentially fall in the second round, but we've talked so much about Walter Nolan. I'm not going to put an emphasis on him, but very talented player, disruptor, impact player. And the last one is Derek Harmon. And I have become more and more of a fan of Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. 6'5", 313 pounds, great first step, can move. He's kind of that in between. He's a guy that doesn't go 330 like Kenneth Grant, and he doesn't go 296 like Walter Nolan. He's kind of in the middle ground. He's a little bit better against the run than Walter Nolan, I feel, or I feel he will be in the NFL. But I think when it comes to being a disruptor, he's better than Kenneth Grant. So it's an interesting prospect. I think he could be moving up boards, and he could go in the top 20. But also, depending on how people feel about him, he could fall into the second round as well. So I don't think either of those 3 guys are locks to potentially go in the first round. So they all could fall to where the 49ers could be within reach with pick 43. I don't know if they'll land at 43, but they could potentially go up and get them if they were close. Now, the next several guys, there's always the chance they could go in the first round if someone falls in love with them, but these are the most likely guys to be in rounds 2 and 3. And the first one I want to talk about is out of Ohio State, Tyleik Williams. And the guy is a physical specimen. So he's 6'3", 334 pounds, and the guy can move, right? He's been timed before at 4'6'8". We'll see what that looks like when he gets to his pro day. But Tyleik Williams, tremendous athlete to be able to move that quickly at straight line speed at 334 pounds. So you're talking about size to be able to stop the run, take on double teams and duo blocks, and be able to win at the point of attack. Tyleik Williams can do it. But the athleticism to be able to get down the line of scrimmage and play against zone schemes, to get a good first step and play in the backfield and be a penetrator and a disruptor in the backfield, this is a really good option for the 49ers. And I think if you're looking to get a day 1 starter, we talked about those guys earlier. Those guys are day 1 starters, and I think Tyleik Williams could fit into that mold as well, especially playing next to a 3-tech. I think if you put Tyleik Williams as the plug defender and the guy who would play next to the 3-tech, this would be fantastic because this guy could stop the run, but then get after the quarterback as well. He had 2.5 sacks last year playing for Ohio State. And, when you look at the things that he can do physically, he's got good hand size. His arm length is not great, But this dude is one of the better run defenders in the entire college football landscape. So he's a guy that, is a dynamite pick if he lands at 43. Like I said, there's a potential he goes anywhere from, I would say, about 27 through 43 right now. I don't think he would make it past the 49ers. I think that's too talented of a guy. We talked about Kenneth Grant and his athleticism. I think Tyleik Williams, even more athletic than Kenneth Grant, but a similar run stopper, physicality wise. These guys are plug defenders. I think Tyleik Williams might have as much upside or more upside than Kenneth Grant. So these are guys who could go there in that area, and he's got a lot of talent. So potentially this would be a solid pick for the 49ers if he came into that area. Of course, just like always, when you get guys like this, they're on Brooke Feldman's freak list, and he deserves to do that. But the hand usage, right, the talent, the technique that's taught at Ohio State is one of the best. So I think that he would be a dynamite pick for the 49ers if he made it to 43. I don't know if he will, but he's got a lot of talent, and he's got a dog mentality. Like, this dude never quits. He never stops. He's got some real nastiness to him. So I like that. And, with all the guys, they have weaknesses, especially defensive linemen. As games progress, they get fatigued. Their pad level starts coming up. They lose leverage. And then that's where you start seeing them kind of go backwards. That's why you have to have a lot of solid players in the NFL and have a nice rotation going. So that way that doesn't happen. And so he is a guy that is a really good run stopper. That is a developmental pass rusher who needs to get his arsenal up. He needs more of a repertoire of moves when it comes to pass rush. But I think that he's got the ability to do so. I think if you had a physical characteristic you were concerned about, it would have to be arm length. Only 32-inch arms means he's not going to be able to win the battle on the inside too many times with arm length, but still a very talented guy that I think the 49ers definitely could be interested in, in that area. Now, next up, I want to talk about a guy that, I probably hear a ton about him, and I haven't talked about him much, but fans have been huge fans of TJ Sanders. So TJ Sanders out of South Carolina, 6'4", 297 pounds. He ran a 4.95 40. Ridiculous speed. You're talking, we talked about the guys earlier, that are potentially going to be first-round picks, and that's where he is, right? Walter Nolan is basically the same size and the same athleticism, speed as TJ Sanders, yet Sanders is a second-round pick, Walter Nolan a 1, because Walter Nolan as seen as more of a blue chipper. But Sanders has got a lot of ability. And the way we're talking about Tyleik Williams as your plug defender, now we're going to talk about TJ Sanders as your 3 tech. So he's built more in the Buckner penetration role, the Javon Hargrave role. These guys are supposed to get in the backfield, be disruptors. And then your plug defender, those are guys like DJ Jones, Hassan Ridgeway. Players like that are supposed to be good against the run, that provide stability on first and second down. And then if you have a guy like Yetur Gross-Matos or an Arden Key, they come in and rush the passer, and those guys come off the field unless they show the ability to get home like DJ Jones did sometimes. Then the 49ers would leave him in, especially with a bull rush to collapse the pocket. So you got TJ Sanders. He had 4 sacks last year for South Carolina, and I love watching South Carolina when you're watching, TJ Sanders. You're watching Demetrius Knight, and then you're watching in the back, Nick Emenwari, just talented dudes all over the place. But this guy is definitely talented, especially when you look at what he did at the combine, showing a lot of athleticism and a lot of pretty good movement skills. He's not gonna win any awards for his lateral quickness, but he showed enough. And he's a guy that's going to exceed more and excel more at pass rush than he is run stopping. But his run stopping is not terrible. He is not as good of a run stopper, in my opinion, as Walter Nolan. I think Walter Nolan is better than TJ Sanders stopping the run. I do think Walter Nolan's a little bit further advanced when it comes to pass rush moves. So I would have Walter Nolan ranked ahead of TJ Sanders. But if Nolan goes at the end of the first round and you end up with TJ Sanders in round 2, I don't think you're upset about it. I think you're feeling pretty good about a player that, plays with an intensity and is able to get in the backfield and make plays. And that's what you're looking for, the disruptor. And that's exactly what he has. And when you're talking about hands, and I talked a little bit about technique when it came to Tyleik Williams, when it comes to TJ Sanders, violence with his hands. The guy gets people moving as soon as he strikes with those hands. Good handwork. He has the ability to just get guys moving. We used to talk about this initial punch. It gets guys back on their heels. That's how you're able to create a player getting off balance. Then you can create separation and be able to get in the backfield and make plays. He does play with a natural leverage. He's got good hips. He's got good flexibility. And all of those things allow him to be able to get through, fight through double teams, and get to the quarterback and make him a pretty good pass rusher. I think he has the ability to line up in multiple places along the defensive line. And so he gives you a little bit of versatility, especially when you talk about a 3-down defender. He can definitely do that. He could play all the way from the 0 tech. He could play the 3 tech for the 49ers. He got drafted by a 3-4. He could play the 5 tech. He could definitely do that. He's got a good amount of skills when it comes to the pass rush and his moves that he uses. He's got a very good rip move. He's also got some crafty inside moves when it comes to counters, and he can cause interior offensive linemen to be in a mode of having to recover. And I think that's something that's really good about him, using his lateral quickness to get them off balance and then be able to use another move to be able to get there. Does a really good job. He also shows the ability to just play tough and the ability to continue to go and accelerate through interior gaps and get home. His explosive first step makes him a 49ers fit. So I think he's going to be a problem against guards. He has the ability to make the plays and do things in the backfield. I think your question marks about him are size, right? When we're talking about those players that are your disruptor players, your 3-tech players, there's going to be a commonality between all of them. They're going to have elite first step. They're going to have good lateral quickness. They're going to put pressure on guards, but they're not going to have the necessary size to be able to hold up consistently against double teams. That's not why they're there. They are there to get in the backfield and disrupt. So when going against double teams, they have to get skinny. They have to get themselves through there. They have to hold their ground and can't give up ground. And that's something that's going to be a little bit more difficult for him. And he's just got to make sure that he doesn't stop his feet and that he plays with a low pad level consistently. But man, he could be one of those real game wreckers if the 49ers got him in the second round. And a real option, if you don't go defensive tackle in round 1, TJ Sanders would make a lot of sense for the San Francisco 49ers in round 2. Now, we are going to talk about another plug player. And we know the plug player are the big guys. We talked about Tyleik Williams earlier. Now we're going to talk about another one, and I've compared him to I compared him to Kenneth Grant, and that's Alfred Collins. So if you watch my video that I did last week, I talked about draft doppelgangers, and you got Kenneth Grant and you've got Alfred Collins, and both of them, are pretty close to the same size. Grant is 6'4", Alfred Collins 6'6". Both of them go for over 330 pounds, and both of them run at 4.95 40. Now, Kenneth Grant could go in the first round. Alfred Collins can go in the second round somewhere. I think anywhere from 50 to 75, which could be late second, early third, could be a spot he goes. And he is a 2-down defender in the NFL. He's going to play first and second down. He's going to help you stop the run. On third down, you're going to want a more accomplished pass rusher coming in, whether that is an edge rusher you're moving inside or another 3-tech defender that you could bring in. So, for instance, let's say that the 49ers drafted Walter Nolan in round 1 and TJ Sanders in round 2, and then in round 3, they got Alfred Collins. They just have all 3 of them. What you might do is you have Alfred Collins play on first and second down. He comes out, then you make sure the other 2 guys are in. Or if you just use a guy that the Niners have, you could say, okay, Alfred Collins come out, Kevin Givens go in and rush the passer. So that is something that's going to hurt his stock a little bit, and that's why I think Kenneth Grant might fall out of the first round as well, is 3-down defensive linemen are definitely more valued than 2-down defensive linemen. But there's still a place for him, and I think Alfred Collins is a very talented player who is got all the size and mass that you could possibly want. He's still got enough explosiveness. But how about this for his arm length? 34 5/8 on the inside, which means if he wins and gets to a chest plate of an interior offensive lineman whose arms are usually 33 inches or smaller, he's going to have the ability to get to the quarterback. He's a bull rush artist who could drive people back. I think he's got a lot of ability to be a real problem. And, you're talking about a guy that is a lot like a Jordan Davis. Now, I'm not saying he's going to have that kind of impact, but I'm saying when you're talking stature and ability, that's kind of where he sits. I don't know if he'll ever reach that kind of point, but he's still good. And I mean, when you watch him in games, I mean, the dude's strength is crazy. He would throw guys aside depending on matchup and just get in there and make plays. He's a good processor. So when you watch him, he can recognize what's going on with the play, what the scheme is, pulling guards, guys coming after him. He makes plays. He down blocks really well, or takes on down blocks really well. I mean, the dude does a great job of playing defensive tackle like you're supposed to play it. He does real good job with run gap integrity, and he's got that grip strength to go with those long arms. It makes him very hard to move. So if you want a run stopper in rounds potentially late 2, early 3, this is where you go. I mean, he's got a lot of ability. So huge fan of Alfred Collins and what he could provide. The question marks are going to be, when do you value a 2-down defensive tackle compared to a 3-down defensive tackle? We talked about, TJ Sanders right now, of the 3 guys we've talked about, have been the only 3-down guy, but he's a 3 tech. The other 2 more so playing the plug role. So he's very talented. This is a guy that's big in the middle, can make plays, bats down footballs. I think that, he could develop into a better pass rusher, but I don't think he'll ever be a 3-down pass rusher in the NFL. So it's pretty easy to figure out what you're getting there, but very talented player. I like him a lot. Now, the next guy I'm going to talk about is probably one of my favorite players in the whole draft. And people have been bringing up injury concerns with him, that they think that might take him off the 49ers board. And that's a possibility. But I don't know. I'm not privy to the information when it comes to injuries. So I don't know for sure if that's going to flag Omar Norman-Lott or not. But what I can say is there are some connections that make sense for the 49ers when talking about Omar Norman-Lott. First off, I've seen Omar Norman-Lott play since he was in high school, from Grant High School. That's near me. I've been to Grant High School several times to watch several players, including some of the best players. Like guys like Shaq Thompson was fantastic when he was at Grant High School. I just think that Omar Norman-Lott, because he was recruited by Herm Edwards to Arizona State, means that he's going to be on the radar for John Lynch. John Lynch loves to call Herm Edwards and ask him about the player. And I think Omar Norman-Lott, even though he finished his career in Tennessee, Herm Edwards is going to have a great feel because he recruited him to Arizona State. So I guarantee the 49ers have seen him play before. They have an idea of who he is. But this dude is an absolute beast. I think if you're looking for a player, in my opinion, that is the most like some of the guys earlier in the draft that have the potential to be, one of those big-time defensive tackles in this league, one of those guys that can compare with a first-round talent like Walter Nolan. I think Omar Norman-Lott is one of those guys. So he's 6'2", so he's a little bit shorter than Walter Nolan, 1 inch shorter. He came in at 291 at the combine, but I think he was trying to lose weight to run faster. I think he's going to play closer to 300, 305. He ran a 5.0540. So he's near a 540, plenty quick enough to be able to play against all schemes. His arm length is sufficient at 33 3/4. Not bad. That's why the height doesn't matter. In fact, height doesn't hurt you when you're interior defensive lineman. Being shorter actually helps you create leverage and play with the lower pad level. So that's not nothing that, it really hurts. His hands are huge, 10 3/4. He's showed a lot of explosiveness with a 31.5-inch vertical leap and a 113 in the broad jump. So there's those things that make a lot of sense. But I think that the things that make the most sense to me is the fact that he can transition his power and strength into speed. Those natural transitions of power and speed on the interior part of your defensive line are one of the things that I look for the most. Walter Nolan does it, TJ Sanders does it, and Omar Norman-Lott does it. And I heard Field Yates say the other day that Norman-Lott might fall into day 3. I think that is crazy. I think if he made it to pick 99 and the 49ers were picking at the end of the 3rd round, this would be a dynamite selection. I think he's got the potential to just be a game wrecker in the NFL. He's got some moves. He's got a great long arm. I talked about those near 34-inch arms, and he just walks back cinders. Go to training camp this year if they get Omar Norman-Lott and watch him against Jake Brendel. He's going to absolutely walk Jake Brendel into Brock Purdy all day long. He's got a great hand fighting ability. He's got a nastiness to him. He does a great job of winning. He's got a lot of really good moves, including a cross chop that is great. He's a quick processor. He picks up he's able to handle stunts. He's able to handle twists. He's able to do all those things because of his agility and speed. He wraps it nice and tight. He doesn't get around the outside. He's able to wrap it nice and tight and get around the edge and get to the quarterback pretty well. I like him. I think he does a really good job of setting up moves, using his speed to force guards to overset, and then countering back inside with those big hands. This dude is a stud. And you're talking about, a guy that he can stop the run, he can get after the quarterback. He's more of a pass rusher. Talked about Walter Nolan. It's probably more dual. But you're talking about TJ Sanders and you're talking about Walter Nolan. I think that Sanders is a little bit better run defender, but I think Walter Nolan is a better pass rusher. And so these guys are pretty close to me when it comes to grade. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a real problem. He's going to be dominant in the NFL. And so, with that get off, that intensity, the motor, the fact that he gets instant penetration in the backfield, he just fits. This is a Chris Kacerek guy by every stretch of the imagination. So Omar Norman-Lott, I'm not going to get tired of talking about him. I'm just going to continue to do it. This is one of those guys that I just feel convicted about and the potential. Now, of course, the medical could always throw a big wrench in that. And I'm not privy to that information. I know I have information on some of the things he's dealt with, but I don't know the severity. I don't know the recovery. I don't know how comfortable they feel with him. All I know is he's a productive player who got 4 sacks last year in the SEC, who got over 5 sacks the year before, generates pass rush from the interior part of a defensive line, and is a disruptor that fits the 49ers 3-tech to a T. And so if you can't get Walter Nolan in round 1, Omar Norman-Lott in round 2, round 3, and I think especially, round pick 75. I mean, I know Field Yates said he might fall into day 3. Maybe he will. But if you got to pick 65 and Omar Norman-Lott was still there, trade up and get him because Omar Norman-Lott is going to be a stud. And I'm not against the 49ers taking 2 defensive tackles the way the roster currently looks in the first 3 picks. I'm not against it. And then the last guy I want to talk about, and there's plenty of guys to talk about. There's more day 2 guys. There's also day 3 guys who I want to get into at some point, but I want to make sure I give these guys their due diligence, is Darius Alexander from Toledo. And it's crazy because I remember watching him way back before the Senior Bowl, and I was a huge fan of him, but I had no idea that he was going to jump up this high in the draft, where Darius Alexander is now considered a legit day 2 guy, right? There's even some that are rumoring he could go in late round 1. I don't think so. I think he is a middle round 2, early round 3 guy. And just depending on how people feel about the level of competition you win against. But 6'4", 305 pounds out of Toledo. Another guy, once again, that athletic profile. We're talking about Walter Nolan. We're talking about TJ Sanders, Omar Norman-Lott, and now Darius Alexander, 6'4", 305, 495, 40. Guys are all within the same range and all kind of win the same way. He had 3.5 sacks last year, which was really good for him in Toledo. He did go against a level of competition that's different from TJ Sanders playing in the SEC, or Omar Norman-Lott playing in the SEC, or Walter Nolan playing in the SEC. So the level of competition has to be taken into consideration, but I think we see a guy that has the physical tools to be able to play in the NFL at a high level. All of his rankings are really good. He moved good in a lot of different areas. His 3-cone was pretty good. He had good speed. His arm length, 34 inches, which is phenomenal. His wingspan, 82 and 2/8. That's phenomenal. His 10-yard split, a 1.72. The dude gets after it. So I think that's one thing to like about him. I think the things that you question are his level of competition and the production that he put forth against that level of competition. He wasn't a great pass defender. He was at rushing the passer. He wasn't great at stopping the run. He was decent. But out of the guys we talked about, he would have been the worst at stopping the run. And he would have probably been, down there with some of the other guys when it comes to rushing the passer. So this is a guy that you're projecting a little bit on what he could be, but you're hoping that he could end up being a very talented player. He's got that initial first step. He explodes off the line of scrimmage and penetrates very quickly. This is one of those things, right? When you're looking for someone that's going to create havoc in the backfield, you have to find that initial first step, that burst, and then that dominant penetrating fashion to be able to play for the 49ers and Chris Kasarik. I think he does, reach that level. He can also win bull rushing and drive guys back into the backfield consistently. The 34-inch arm allows him to use that single arm to be able to get guys pushed back, that straight arm, push them back, drive them into the quarterback. And he has the necessary strength from the bottom half to be able to do that. He's got a lot of mobility for his size, and he can change direction pretty quickly. Got scheme versatility to be able to play, both sides. So if you needed a guy to come in and stop the run, I think he needs to get better at that, but he's definitely got the ability to do so. He's got pretty good feet, and I think that allows him to win. His best move has got to be his swim moves, his arm overs. Those are definitely his best. I think other than that, he needs to get a little bit better with some of his moves, especially his counter moves. Those could get better, but he's a guy that's got potential. He's also got some special teams help as well. He's had a lot of success being able to help on field goal block. So that could be something that helps as well. So very good player. I think we all talk about the same stuff when we're talking about weaknesses, and there are some weaknesses for him. One of those is his aggressiveness, and he'll lose gap integrity, makes him not good against the run. That's one of the things. That's why he graded lower than some of the others. So getting more discipline on his rush lanes, being able to stay in his gap with gap integrity could make him a lot better in that category. So it could be as simple as honing him in. And that's probably why he continues to move up boards, because people see the things he could get better at. And if he did, he'd be a real winner. Same with hand placement. He's got violent hands. He's got a great first step and it's disruptive. But it also is very important where your hands go. And if you are keen on hitting guys right where they should be, you're going to win more than you're not, especially with that 34-inch arm length. That's going to give him 2 inches over a lot of interior offensive linemen in this league and allow him to get control and win. The first guy to get to that chest plate is usually going to have the best opportunity. Now, the chop, some of the wrist control moves, those will help as well. He does have a good arm over. But, yeah, he's a fun prospect, and the 49ers have several guys in round 2 they could potentially go for. There's actually a couple more guys I have that I'm not going to talk about in this one, but if you have time, go ahead and check them out. I'll get to them at some point. You got Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M, another penetrator, another 3-tech. And then if you're talking about a mass and a large individual that could play the plug, you're talking about Deion Walker. So just to kind of give you an idea of guys that are in each role. So as far as plug defenders, you've got Kenneth Grant, you've got Tyleik Williams, you got Alfred Collins, and you've got Deion Walker. When you're talking about penetrators, you got Walter Nolan and TJ Sanders and Omar Norman-Lott and Darius Alexander, Shamar Turner. And then when you're talking about a guy that could be universal with both, I think you're talking about Derek Harmon. That's why Harmon will probably end up going in the first round, stop the run, and be able to penetrate and get there. But a lot of really good defensive tackles. And if the 49ers need to go defensive tackle and they need to find starters and they're wanting to develop this, yes, there's some day 3 guys that I want to talk about as well, because there's still very talented guys there. But there are very talented guys in day 2. And if the 49ers came away with 2 day 2 picks at defensive tackle out of the 3 that they currently have, I don't think anyone would complain about that. Some guys that could probably start in the NFL and with just a little bit of a push could start for the 49ers in year 1. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about these guys. Which ones are your favorite? Let me know if I need to talk about somebody else. Also, if you want to see breakdowns of some of these players, head on over to Patreon. I've broke down Omar Norman-Lott. I've broke down Tyleik Williams. I've broke down Derek Harmon and Walter Nolan and Kenneth Grant. Those are all available over on Patreon. You can sign it up. It's in the description section. 49ers Cutback on Patreon. Go check those out. All the other positions are getting broke down as well. I just put together a breakdown on one of my favorite tight end prospects. That's available over there as well. So it's a lot of fun on Patreon right now. I have I think between like 25 and 30 videos that are up about certain draft picks and deep dives into them. This, of course, if you're listening on a audio platform, it's 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.